Today we gather to shed light on the unique challenges, pressures, and anxieties that weigh upon the hearts and minds of men in our fast-paced, ever-evolving world. Welcome to Unmasking the Man, a men's talk show where we empower, uplift, and ignite meaningful conversations. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We are full house again.
You're right.
And the spotlight, once again, is on the other side, the right side, I believe.
You're right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Of course, if you're just joining us today, perhaps for the first time, this is Unmasking the Man. You'll learn more as we proceed. And of course, let me introduce my panel. On my right, I have Levi Kones.
Glad to be here.
Karibu sana.
Very nice again to have this conversation.
Beautiful. And on my left, I have Dr. Professor Pastor Ray Kesis.
PhD,
PhD,
MA, KCSE, KCPE. Thank you so much. It's nice being here.
Right.
Welcome.
All right.
And of course, on the spotlight, we have again Pastor Gilbert Odero.
We are glad to be here. Please welcome on board.
Thank you so much.
Right.
And of course, Davis.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Wow, full house today. So we are here to talk about stress. And not just stress, but in the context of men. Something that perhaps is foreign to some, that men are actually stressed human beings. Maybe some are not. Like Pastor Kesis here was asking, what is that thing again? You said stress.
Stress?
But I think stress is normal. Yeah. What we want to talk about probably is stress on the excess.
On the excess.
Because stress is normal. For life to move on,
Right.
there must be some stretching here and there.
Definitely.
So there's normal stress, but our concern is that which now
Flips.
has gone beyond the
Yes,
normal
yes.
and is now becoming a concern. Yeah.
And for men, I think sometimes we realize when it's too late because of how we've been, brought up to believe that we have to put on this mask of, this masculinity mask that
That all is well.
all is well, and even if it's not, you have to act like it is.
Fake it till you
Fake
make
it.
it.
Till you make it.
I believe that's noble because ultimately you ought to have somebody to lean on. The buck stops with a man in a family. I'm imagining when you're really stressed and you have a family and you, as a man you are crying all over that I'm stressed. What happens to the wife and children?
So there's that. There's, of course, we are not entirely saying that people should now just go about crying for every other thing. And no, but we are talking about an extreme level of anxiety and stressful situations that men subject themselves to. But because of our upbringing and the cultures within which we have, some of us, been brought up, you find it almost difficult to express, to share that you're going through a difficult situation, that you need help.
I think well,
Maybe that's why we need this platform, Unmasking the Man, to get to know when and how and in what platform do you open up as a man and express the stress, lest you express it carelessly everywhere and then you miss the mark. It is evidently true that masculinity, the hierarchy is the buck stops at the man. And stress is one of the things that is taking toll on us, just as we are discussing. And it's true, at what level do you open up and say it's overwhelming? So I want to believe in this forum, possibly we'll be looking at the distress, not the eustress, because I think a bit of stress will make you wake up early in the morning and step out. Will make a bit of stress will tell you that bills must be paid,
Right.
and you must work as a man. So I want to believe that's why we're here.
Sure.
And my brother.
yeah. I was going to say, by the way, I think in terms of the stress, it's important in unmasking this conversation to tackle the issue of the stress itself. There's what I think is necessary stress and there's what is very much unnecessary stress. But by and large, I find that for the most part, most men are driven by, most stress emanates from managing expectations. And management of expectations is really high up there, because as a man, there are certain things that are expected of you as you come. Some of the expectations are, one, from without, maybe from family members. Then there's expectation from society, and there's expectation from self, you know. So self, of course, are the goals that you have wanted for your life. You're not where you wanted to be, or you're striving, and maybe your peers are doing a little bit better than you. Men are always so keen about that, you know, and looking, you know, what has happened with the other guy and all that. And then there's also the family pressure, where you're expected as a man to be, you know, as a son, we expect sons of this home to be like this, and we expect this. And then there's that one of the home where the wife is giving you stress. Now, if you look at the global economy right now, that's not doing so well. A lot of people have had to downscale their living standards. Yes. Yeah. You'll find that somebody has taken a child maybe to a school that's upmarket. But even with the recession that's going on, the fact that he's not getting enough money still in the bank, he's still keeping that child there because of expectation. Because he doesn't want to be seen like he has, you know, stepped down the ladder, or has had to move to a smaller house. Those are great sources of stress for men.
So he's bringing upon himself.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Some of it is unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know, some of it would be necessary in the sense there are things life throws at you that may stress you here and there, and we have talked about how you manage those ones.
Yeah.
But we must also be able to define what is really necessary stress and what is actually unnecessary stress.
I think another aspect that we are not to forget is stress that comes as a result of life experiences. Sometimes maybe you have a loved one, maybe your mother, maybe your wife is sick, severely sick. How do you go about that as a man? Or maybe you've lost a loved one, and as it is in the society, you are not expected to cry as a man. There is a way you're supposed to present yourself in such situations. So I think by the end of this discussion, we can also address that thing. How am I supposed to behave as a man in times of maybe loss, like death? How are you supposed to behave? Because there are those people who believe that crying is a sign of weakness. How are we supposed to express our sorrow? How are we supposed to express our innermost feelings in traumatizing situations?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And that's after deciphering, is this truly a stressful moment? Of course, loss of someone is, you know, someone sick is. But you must define, this thing I'm going through right now, is it really, truly?
But who
What
determines
is the source of this stress?
Who determines what is, because people have been exposed to different things over time, and our response mechanism is also very different. So who determines what is stressful to me? Because sometimes I think we can make people look like they are crying for nothing, when deeply that particular thing that is so small to you means the whole world to them. So how do we then get to that point where you're able to say, this is genuinely a stressful moment, I need to take a break off this, and you know, Pastor?
I think the wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches. So everyone knows to what extent stress has gone beyond limits, and they need to be assisted. But I'm looking at it from David. He comes with his army to Ziklag, and he finds that the Amalekites have taken his wife, children, and those of the soldiers. Then the soldiers turn against him and they want to kill him. And the Bible says that David found strength in the Lord his God. Sometimes it is good to know that when everybody turns against you, there is a God who doesn't turn against you. That's a very important place men need to run to. Number two, there is need to be honest in expressing what we feel. I think David is one of the most honest people I've read. You just need to stray into the book of Psalms 35, 32, 37, and see David praying for enemies. You know, he prays and says, God, why don't you kill them? Why don't you make their path dark and slippery? You know, That is somebody expressing his feeling.
Yeah.
But if I prayed that prayer in a church today, somebody will say the pastor is wrong.
Yes.
But
There's a
yet,
spirit that has taken over you.
it is that expression of what you feel that is how you relieve stress. You relieve that stress. Look at Jeremiah. Jeremiah at some point tells God, you deceived me. How many of us can pray and tell God, God, you told me to go to Australia for further studies. I've gone there. I'm not finding anything. I'm suffering. God, you lied. Your faith, you are not a Christian. No, let's pray against this spirit. Yet it is in scripture that Jeremiah tells God, hey God, you deceived me. You told me that you knew me since I was a child. You are sending me. But these people are too hard on me. So I think what men lack sometimes is that authenticity. That's why you see all the brothers here talking about, hey, we are bottling up. David doesn't bottle up nothing. And Jeremiah doesn't bottle up nothing. And you know who else? Jesus goes to the Garden of Gethsemane and says, let me tell you how I feel, Father.
This cup.
Take this cup.
This
I don't want it.
This one, no.
That's genuine. And that's a man of men. He goes to the cross and he says, Father, why have you forsaken me? Do Christians say that? You dare say that? Maybe somebody is mourning and say, my God, you have left me. And we will say, no, God can't leave you. God can't leave you. This guy's high on something.
I think from what I'm seeing there, it's important where you take that cry to. You see, he's talking about David crying to God, you know, telling him, you know, make their paths dark and slippery. Talking about, you know, how Jeremiah went, you know, and said, you deceived me. If you know, we can't replace, for example, these balls here with handkerchiefs, you know, and have a, you know, a crying session for the next 30 minutes in a bid to show that we are unbottling ourselves.
Yes.
We must be cognizant of the fact that the place we need to take our stresses to is as important as having to express ourselves. You know.
Now, where ideally will a man take the stress? Because now a man must deal with stress.
Yeah.
There is no shortcut.
Yeah.
All men must deal with stress. Now, when it is slightly more than you feel you can bear, where do you take it? Of course, we have said God. Then where else?
Where else?
Unmasking the man. We're here just to help vent out and get to say, do we have forums where men, do we have a friend you can confide into? Because it's evidently true that if you can't confide into a fellow man, chances are you cannot really open up to God. Even as we discussed David, you realize there are levels where David would share. But there are levels where he reached to God openly and said, God, this is me. That is ultimate. It is true the buck begins and stops with God. But humanly speaking, there are moments you need somebody, you need a man in life to confide unto, by all standards. It's true at times men feel, I will die a man. You see, ultimately you will die. If you have to die with the story, you will die. So why do you want to die? So this behooves us to identify at least somebody to confide unto. And I want to thank God because the more we move on, we realize there are a lot of counselors. Whereas Christ remains the chief counselor, but there are people you can confide into. So identify a friend. So the question that begs an answer to all men here is, do you really have a confidant?
That's the question. I think every man needs a Jonathan in their lives.
Do you have a Jonathan?
Yeah.
Do you have one? Because that is the trouble we have.
Yeah.
We've reached a place where men feel, I don't need anybody. I can die, I can fight my battle alone. You can't.
Yeah.
But I would also ask the same question: can you be a Jonathan
To someone else.
You see, the Jonathan David story is so powerful in that this was the son of a king, friends with a gentleman who his father detested.
Yes.
Most of the time tried to kill. Yet he kept his secrets, did not betray him, did not ever go and converse with his father. And they say blood is thicker and tell him, by the way, you know this guy, he's over here. You know, he stuck true to the friendship to the very end. I think it also, for you to talk about, because so many men will say, I don't have such a friend, but are you that friend? Because you attract to what you give.
Are you the Jonathan?
You know,
Actually, when you look at even at Christ, when he was going to the mount to pray, he was not going alone, and he was not going with the whole 12 disciples. He had favorite disciples that he could ask to go with. So I'm of the idea that actually you need a Jonathan, and you need to be a Jonathan to someone else.
You know what, just so, while I was at the university, no, I think after university, I dated some young lady for 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Tell us.
Dating.
Tell us, Doc.
Dating.
Yes, yes.
4 years.
We loved each other.
Tell us, Doc.
Don't insist. I get I can easily get emotional.
This is taking a very interesting turn. You're right.
Then one day she walks in and says it's over.
Yes.
And I believe I could handle it, but after she left, you know the weight of being dropped is not sudden. Yes. You start realizing I'm deflating. And I called a friend, and that friend told me, "Where are you? Can you walk out? We talk." I walked for 4 kilometers one direction. Then walked back. You know, that was one way when your pressure is too high. One is physical engagement.
Right.
Walking, running, punching the wall. There is energy that comes with immense stress.
Pressure.
That's why when somebody picks a knife and they are angry,
Run.
what follows is in the media. Yeah. So I think it is important to have someone, at least I had someone talk to me and told me, take a walk and what have you. And, I took a walk, and that energy, walking 4 kilometers, and it was late in the evening, and I just kept walking. It's later on when I thought about where I walked, I said, that was quite some energy. Right. Now you can imagine if that was discharged on someone, that would be too much. So I think men need to know that sometimes when it's too much, it's good to walk away from the space.
From the scene.
Yeah, from that scene. Because what could follow could leave you locked up for many years, and that's that kind of thing. So you need to discharge the stress, find someone to talk to. We have talked of friends, we have talked of God, we have talked of counselors, but what about relatives? Sometimes there are relatives who are close to us, isn't it? Sometimes. Not every relative.
not everyone, yeah.
You may find there is one cousin out of all cousins that you are comfortable with. Yeah. One uncle, one aunt. Yeah, it's good to turn to that.
The other thing I would say to add to what you have said, because it's very important, is the idea of postpone the decision. Sometimes don't be impetuous to make decisions under stress. One of the things that has worked for me personally is I always tell myself, leave it overnight. What you think now and what you think tomorrow morning
Be different.
are very different. Sometimes as men, we are wired to try and deal with something immediately. And that can be our undoing sometimes, You're at a high level of stress, something has happened, you want to punish someone right there and then, and it can have disastrous consequences. If you learn the art of telling yourself, let me wait it out, let me sleep over it, you will find that you'll be able to handle better your stress. Because guess what? Morning is coming, you like it or not. It will either come with you having made a bad decision, or it will come with you having thought through and making a correct one. Yeah. It better come with the latter.
Wow.
So what we need to ask my brother Justus is, when you have work-related problems, who do you tell? When you have wife problems,
Who do you tell?
who do you tell? When you have children problems, because there are different categories of problems. Then sometimes you have health problems, serious health problems that are stressing you. Who do you tell? Because once we know, the beginning of telling is one way of discharging. They say when you share a problem, you have halved the problem just by sharing it. And so men must develop the habit of, as Brother Kone said, identify first who to tell. Then once you know who to tell, you have halved the problem. Because somebody else will always give you another perspective.
I don't know any of you if you have any lived experience in terms of a situation that perhaps in the moment of it happening to you, it appeared to be the worst punishment God could have allowed to come your way, and yet having gone through it and come out on the other side, in hindsight, you have everything to thank him for having allowed you to go through it.
Wow. That reminds me of some company I worked for many years. And in business field, I made a nice sale. And I thought that would make a turn to my life. Unfortunately, a colleague came from nowhere and told the boss, you know what? This was my order. I had serviced it pretty well. I'm like, what? And they colluded with the boss, and finally the order was taken away. And that made that U-turn of my life. I said, wow.
Was that sales where you were to get a commission?
Yes.
And so you lose the sale and the commission.
I lose the sale and the commission. And I had processed the sale all the way to the end. If anything, I had even delivered whatever it was. Then the boss and my colleague colluded, and it's like, man, this was not your sale. Chances are you bumped into somebody's order. Wow. Turned around, took off from the company, went a different direction, and God opened beautiful ways for me. And when I look at it round, I realized that was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
I remember I talked to my wife about it and said, what do we do about this? Should we take legal action? She told me, no, just take it easy. Cry to who?
To God.
Pastor. Wow. Cry to who?
To God.
To God. And at some point in time, it looked like things were tough. Things were not ends were not meeting. But when I trusted God, God told me, no, if you can't go above your leader, take a different turn. And when I look at it now, I'm like, thank God. I look forward to meet that gentleman and tell him, thank you for that. I think it helped me.
Actually, the sharing that Elder has given has reminded me of one time I was working in one company in Kitengela, and then over the COVID period, I worked in that company for more than 1 year. And then we were purely doing day shift, but when the COVID was elapsing, then we started doing day shift and night shift. And so it happened that I was required to go to work on Sabbath, and I was having a conflict with that. Actually shared that with my bosses and told them that I'm unable to come on Sabbath. And they told me, because you serve at a high position, we cannot allow you to miss. You have to be there. You have to be there with your members. So actually what I did is I prayed over it. I shared it with my family. I shared it with my friends, people that I actually thought I could count on. So that's why I'm saying that sometimes you might think that you are sharing it with someone so that they help you, but they end up misleading you. So we have to, again, think of that aspect. And what I got from most of my friends and some of my family is that, God will understand, God knows the economic times are tough. And truthfully speaking, I didn't have any savings, I didn't have any money. But at the end of the day, I just decided to quit the job. I just said, God, I know I'm not faithful. I know there are things that are still pending in my life. But on this Sabbath thing, I think I'm not going to go. And actually, God came in very faithful. I can say towards the end of the month, I got good deals, some doors opened. So I can say that there are blessings that God brings through disguise. So stress, to some extent, is a blessing.
Earlier on in my marriage, my wife and my mother had a huge clash. And this clash was really threatening to tear me apart, because this is somebody in your bedroom.
This is my mother.
That is your mother. And both of them were not seeing eye to eye on a particular issue. And I agonized with how I would handle it and who I would go to talk about it. Eventually, I believe God led me to have a chat with my brother-in-law, my wife's brother. And I took him for lunch, and I mentioned to him, I told him, this is the issue happening in my house. I'm feeling like this, and I'm feeling. He said, how are you? I told him, I'm feeling this way about how my wife handle this situation, and I'm feeling this way about how my mother handled. And he gave me advice and told me, you know what, I've heard you, I'm going to go and handle my sister quietly. You go and handle your mother. Let's see if we can bring them together.
Wow.
And do you know it worked?
Wow.
You're right.
Yeah?
Wow.
You're right. You're right.
So I think also you must sit and ask yourself, with this particular issue, who is best? Because some people are good at talking football, but they're not good at discussing wives. Some guys are good at handling a job situation, but they're not good at, handling a financial situation. Wow. And you have to look and you really, and this is where the concept of where I don't know where people who don't know God go to. Because God will guide you, as you're seated and you're thinking and as you're taking time, because you don't rush into it. God will drop a name. Maybe he'll even say, talk to Cassis, and maybe you had not even envisioned that, and it can work out really fine.
Wow. Sure.
Men, we don't know where men who don't know God take their stress to. It's important, very important, because ultimately, when all is said and done, where do you go to?
Yeah.
And who gives you wisdom even to lead you to who to share your stress with? So it is important to know that God expects men to lead. And he knows equally men get stuck under stress. And at times he allows that our way, that he may purify us for better service or better work or better challenges. Sure. But then he must equally be the one to lead us and to whom to share with before you ultimately pour it to him.
Right.
It's very important.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It was worth giving you the...
Could I have kept quiet?
I know. You have such a burning, statement that we can end this show with.
I have a statement, but it's not burning. I will just say that when you can handle stress, it's okay. But if it reaches a point where your stress is over a prolonged period of time, you may need medical attention. There is no harm for a man to walk to a medical facility and say, I've been feeling low for the last 3 weeks. It may save your life and save somebody's life, because it is normal when stress comes, it somehow resolves in a short period of time. But when it's prolonged over a very long period of time, we could be dealing with now depression issues, mild depression. So it is in order for a man to walk there. And sometimes just a tablet, an injection, and you are sorted.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. That relieves my stress. The show is done. And as we bring this powerful conversation on what is stressing men to a close, I want to express my gratitude for the, courageous men who continue to share their experiences, thoughts, and emotions. Your vulnerability and willingness to engage in these discussions have created a space of authenticity, empathy, and growth. I hope to see you again in the next episode of Unmasking the Man. But until then, God bless. See you then.